Kyle Austin, Mike Griffith from MLive.com here at Spartan Stadium. And Mike, it's finally the big week, Ohio State. What stood out to you today about what we just heard from Mark D'Antonio?
Just I guess the head coach being feisty, which you would expect him to be. One of the reporters from Detroit somehow incorporated the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry into a Michigan State press conference, and said that it should be talked about a lot. And Mark D'Antonio said, not really, because after all, Kyle, I mean, the last 2 years, the Big Ten champion has been determined in this football game, and there's a good chance that it'll be determined in this football game again. So, I think the Michigan State players, judging by the number of Detroit media that was here and a lot of the questions that were directed at them, I think they got the message pretty loud and clear that they still have a lot of doubters in their own state.
Well, I think that's the benefit of losing that Nebraska game. Obviously, they would have liked to have been 10-0. This would have been, game of the century type talk if they were both 10-0, but this gives them that chip back on their shoulder. They would have found a way to get it anyway. But Connor Cook came up here and said a quote we've heard many times, which is, no one expects us to win this game. No one thinks we can do anything. But I think that's the kind of mindset that they want going into this game. And I think Nebraska legitimizes that a little bit more, that, hey, we are the underdog. And, Cook's shoulder plays in that too. That 13-point line certainly takes into effect the uncertainty around his condition.
Yeah, and I've said it throughout the year. Michigan State's a lot more comfortable, I think, playing as an underdog. They like that. And to their credit, Michigan State has won 5 of their last 6 games against top 10 teams. So, as Jack Allen said, they like making people look foolish. But, you mentioned the Nebraska loss and, whether it came down to one play or not. That's the kind of game that Michigan State has to win. In this case, though, Kyle, as D'Antonio said and as the players have said, Shalik Calhoun said it best, that game isn't going to cost them their season. They still control their destiny. I mean, make no mistake about it. If Michigan State wins at Ohio State, which is currently number 2, and then beats a Penn State team that's 7-2 currently, and then beats an Iowa team that either is undefeated or has 1 loss, they're going to be in the college football playoff. I don't think there's any question that with those kind of wins, they will be able to move from number 9 to number 4, especially when you look at everything that has to take place. But it doesn't matter if they don't beat Ohio State.
I wouldn't say there's no question. I think it's certainly more likely. They got help last weekend. Oregon beating Stanford, which is double whammy for them because, A, it makes that Oregon win look better, and Stanford was one of those one-loss teams. LSU lost, that helped. Baylor lost, that helped. The Big 12 is looking like it might do what we thought and kind of cannibalize itself.
It could. Baylor, Oklahoma, that's pretty.
But I think they're certainly in better shape right now than I thought they were on November 7th. But, yeah, they got to go into this game and have a different result than last year, which was when J.T. Barrett lit up that secondary. Interesting. I mean, that's where we've seen the most change, I think, in the last 2 weeks. They're going with a few more veteran guys. They've got Darian Hicks back now. They're moving Demetrius Cox back to safety, where I think he plays better. Can that secondary, I guess, against that passing attack, and they have a better result than last year?
Well, and I don't know if you heard Darian Harris today, but I agree with Darian. The Ohio State offensive line won that game. When Ohio State was able to run the ball effectively, that changed everything. And not many teams had done that. Remember, Michigan State led the country in run defense last year, and yet Ohio State had, I think, 268 yards on the ground. To me, this game comes down to Michigan State's front 7. Are they able to take away the run and force Ohio State into some passing situations? The Buckeyes, like Michigan State, Kyle, they've had some injuries. They've lost some receivers. J.T. Barrett, as great as he played here, he hasn't played another game like that. He's played very well, but he hasn't played like that. And you think about those factors, and I don't know if either one of these teams is really playing as well as it was at this stage when they met last year, but somebody's going to emerge with a victory. And I think it's going to come down to the trenches. I think it's which units control the trenches, Ohio State or Michigan State. To me, that keys everything else around it.
Well, note about the trenches, Joel Heath, Mark D'Antonio did come out and say he is expected to play. Not a guy, I mean, he's a defensive tackle. We don't talk about him a lot, but that's a big addition.
Fifth-year senior guy from Ohio, and you mentioned Darian Hicks being in the lineup from Ohio. I mean, these things matter, and if you don't think so, just put the tape back into the Michigan State-Michigan game and, fast forward past the last play, but watch how Michigan State manhandled Michigan, getting 20 first downs to 10 and like 160 yards more. Michigan State won that game in the trenches. Great special teams play by Michigan almost led to the Wolverines winning it. This week, hard to say what it's going to come down to. Beyond if there's a wash in the trenches, I think Ohio State has the better skill players. It's their senior day, Kyle. They've won 23 in a row. That's why it's so important. Michigan State has to win the trenches because in the case of a wash, I think the Buckeyes would win the game.
All right, well, I'll do it for today. I'm heading to Chicago because I almost forgot this week, Michigan State basketball has a top 5 matchup.
Top 5 matchup, and I'll be watching the college football playoff rankings that come out tonight and see where Michigan moves.
A lot of stuff going on. So check out live.com/Spartans for basketball, football later this week from Columbus, and we'll see you there.